Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Today, 3 years ago, my friend Lisa sent me this video of her sitting on a swing at the edge of a playground in the north of Kyiv. The woods starting just a few hundred meters away. The forest loomed quiet, shadows stretching long as the afternoon dimmed. Suddenly, the wail of an air raid siren cut through the stillness, followed by a deep thud of artillery barrels firing somewhere close by. The ground seemed to vibrate beneath her feet, the sky heavy with the weight of what was coming. Little did I know, at that very moment, in the forests and suburbs surrounding Kyiv, places like Bucha, Irpin, Homostel, her fellow Ukrainians were digging in, preparing to fight for their families, for their friends, and their neighbors, preparing to fight for their freedom. Among them were men like Alexander Markov, a journalist who traded his pen for a rifle, and countless others. Soldiers, volunteers, civilians, who stood shoulder by shoulder, determined to hold the line. Many of them would not live to see the day Kyiv breathed freely again. Weeks later, when the counteroffensive pushed the enemy back and the threat looming over Kyiv was lifted, the city exhaled. But not without scars. It was Ukraine's first decisive punch. The moment the world saw that this invasion could be stopped, that Ukraine would not be broken. Kiev's streets never stayed silent for long. Missiles and air raid alerts would return again and again. But the threat of enemy tanks rolling through the city was gone, for now. And amidst the air raid sirens, the names of the fallen lingered in the air, on memorial boards, in conversations whispered over candlelight dinners. For those who lived through it, like my friend Lisa, the sound of that spring never really disappeared. And for the rest of us, looking back now, we remember them not just as soldiers or defenders, but as people who fought and died so that Kyiv and Ukraine could stand tall and free.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have an excellent broadcast for you this week. First, we'll be covering the news, as we always do. That'll be followed by our German Aid to Ukraine report. That'll be followed by a USAID update with Bionade. That will be followed by just some extra news stuff. And then we will go to Mr. Gash, who will cover some stuff going on with the Russian forces, and I believe drones, but we'll learn soon. And then we'll, of course, at the end have as many questions from you guys as we can field. So if you guys have any questions during the broadcast, feel free on the chat, or if you're watching after the fact, in the comments, to ask any questions that you might have, and we'll do our best to answer them. If you could, please hit the like button and subscribe. We've had a few run-ins with YouTube. They don't like us covering the war. It's got violence in it. They don't like that. It's not good for advertisers. So we rely a lot on your guys' goodwill and direct promotion of us and telling YouTube you like it to get by. So thanks so much for all your support. Also check us out on Twitter and Blue Sky. That's where we post all our stuff. We had a nice little thread. We'll probably talk about that during the broadcast this week. Also, check out Tochnyi.info. That's our website, and that's where we have a lot of really good research and interactive maps, articles, maps, things like that. So head on over there and check that stuff out when you have time. There's a lot of great technical details and information. And so without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the news.
These are the main headlines as of March 23rd, 2025. First, we have operations. During the night of March 16th, an energy facility in Russia's Astrakhan region experienced an intense blaze following an incident involving drones. The governor communicated on Telegram that debris from drones triggered the fire at the site, although the exact location within the fuel and power network was not disclosed. Another Telegram account reported that drones linked to the Ukrainian armed forces targeted the city of Yeysk, with residents reporting a series of explosions above the Sea of Azov. A fire continues to rage at an oil pumping station in Krasnodar Krai following a drone strike carried out by Ukrainian forces on March 19th. During efforts to extinguish the blaze, officials explained that a drop in pressure within a burning tank led to an explosion that discharged burning oil, which further exacerbated the problem. Earlier reports from a pro-Kremlin outlet and local authorities indicated that the Kaukazskaya oil pumping station was hit by unmanned aerial vehicles, resulting in significant damage to its infrastructure and an initiation of a fire that spanned a small area before expanding dramatically to cover approximately 10,000 square meters. In the course of addressing the incident, 2 firefighters sustained injuries and about 30 personnel were evacuated as operations at the facility were halted. The station is a vital component of Russia's energy export network, linking a railroad terminal with another major pumping station, and is integrated into the Caspian Pipeline Consortium system that transports up to 6 million metric tons of oil each year. Satellite imagery has shown that extensive damage was inflicted on the ammunition storage sections of the Engels-2 strategic bomber base, located approximately 600 kilometers from Ukraine, following a drone assault attributed to Ukraine earlier this week. The recent strike on this key facility, which accommodates Tu-95 and Tu-160 bombers that are used to launch missile strikes against Ukrainian targets, and this is part of a broader campaign aimed at undermining Russia's military capabilities by targeting infrastructure deep within its territory. This marks the 3rd attack on the facility during the invasion, with previous operations occurring in January. According to Ukrainian security sources, drone pilots working alongside special operations units from the Ukrainian army carried out the attack on the airfield in Russia's Saratov Oblast during the preceding night of the 20th of March. Detailed satellite images revealed that the assault resulted in significant structural damage to warehouses, bunkers, and open storage platforms, with noticeable signs of fire in the surrounding area. Residents in the vicinity reported hearing powerful explosions early on the 20th of March, with reverberations reaching as far as the nearby city of Saratov, located roughly 15 kilometers from the base. Subsequent online footage captured extended sequences of secondary detonations as stored munitions continued to react for several hours after the initial attack. Meanwhile, local authorities described the incident as one of the most intense unmanned aerial vehicle incursions they had ever experienced. Since Tuesday, Russian military sources have indicated that Ukrainian ground forces are launching offensives in Belgorod Oblast, with reports suggesting an effort to penetrate border defenses in Krasnoyarushki district adjacent to Kursk. Ukrainian units recently pulled back from most of the Sudzhansky district in Kursk, which they had maintained since August of 2024, although they do continue to hold some positions along the border. In a counteraction, Russian troops have claimed to secure a small segment of Ukrainian territory near the village of Novenke in Sumy, and heavy clashes have persisted as Russian forces advanced. While most Ukrainian officials have largely refrained from commenting on the Belgorod developments, early on there were reports that it was fabricated by Russian sources. This is relatively common. They'll claim there was an attack, and then they'll claim they repelled the attack. But in this case, President Zelensky later confirmed the operation and explained it was a strategic, preemptive move to thwart any attempt by Russia to open new fronts, and noted that Russian forces are currently concentrating along the Sumy border in anticipation of further moves, and that they've also reinforced areas near Kharkiv and towards Zaporizhia. Ukraine's defense ministry has confirmed that a homegrown ground robotic system known as Lyut, or Fury, has been officially added to the military's arsenal and approved for active deployment. Developed as part of a broader initiative to safeguard soldiers using remote-controlled platforms, the Lyut unmanned ground vehicle, which made its debut in 2023, has already seen combat use. In September of 2024, personnel from the UAREG unit of Ukraine's Special Operations Forces employed the Lyut in coordinated maneuvers near Volfine in Russia's Kursk Oblast, working in tandem with FPV drones and mortar systems. During the engagement, enemy forces experienced significant setbacks, with a portion of their troops forced to retreat. While the Lyut sustained damage from handheld anti-tank grenades, they managed to complete the mission and return safely. Despite its compact, almost toy-like exterior, Ukrainian soldiers have described the Lyut as an exceptionally capable machine, akin to a, quote, real monster truck that can easily navigate through terrain and obstacles. The system is versatile, and it can be outfitted with a machine gun to engage hostile infantry and suppress firing positions. Enhancements such as an improved tow hitch have further boosted its utility, making it an important asset for evacuating casualties and transporting supplies like ammunition. Designed for many roles in challenging environments, the Lyut is equipped with surveillance and fire support systems. Its armament includes a 7.62mm machine gun, and it's fitted with advanced detection systems that operate for both day and night, ensuring effective target acquisition from protected locations. The compact design allows it to be stored in a military pickup truck bed, while its silent electric engine, substantial battery life, high ground clearance, and level 4 armor make it well suited for prolonged operations across diverse terrains. The system is remotely operated via a console that enables a single operator to control both its movement and combat functions, with a communication range of up to 2 kilometers under optimal conditions and optical sensors that detect targets at distances of around 1,200 meters. It weighs around 330 kilograms, and it's capable of 72 hours of operations, covering a range of around 20 kilometers and sustaining continuous movement for around 3 hours. Up next, we have economy and aid. Estonia has committed to acquiring military equipment and supplies valued at 100 million euros for Ukraine, encompassing a large range of items such as drones, unmanned ground vehicles, watercraft, and medical equipment, all manufactured by local defense firms. The announcement was conveyed by the Estonian Defense Ministry's press service and noted that specific details, including quantities and timelines for delivery, are being withheld for security reasons. The arrangement builds on an agreement from the previous year in which Estonia pledged to allocate a portion of its GDP annually to support domestic defense industry in contribution to Ukraine's efforts. Feedback from Ukrainian counterparts has reportedly helped streamline the aid process, ensuring that these resources will be provided to support Ukraine's strategic initiatives. President Zelensky confirmed on March 19th that Ukraine received a new delivery of F-16 fighter jets. He indicated that multiple aircraft had been delivered, although he did not specify an exact number of aircraft or an originating country. During the press briefing, he dismissed earlier Russian claims of downing an F-16 and stated that no such incident occurred. This was in response to a claim earlier that day that Russian media reported an F-16 loss in Sumy Oblast, which the Ukrainian Air Force also firmly refuted. Sweden is moving forward with the planned transfer of its Saab 340 AEW and C airborne early warning aircraft to Ukraine, with the delivery schedule tied to the completion of specific modifications to Ukraine's F-16 jets to ensure the systems are compatible. This advanced platform is set to provide Ukraine with enhanced capabilities for aerial radar reconnaissance and the control of fighter operations, which is expected to be particularly valuable during efforts to intercept large-scale Russian missile and drone assaults. Swedish defense officials have clarified that there is no overall delay in the transfer, although certain security-sensitive details, including precise timings and locations, will remain undisclosed. Originally announced in May 2024 as part of a Swedish military aid package, the initiative also included comprehensive support such as pilot training and the preparation of maintenance crews and operators for onboard equipment. Aviation experts have noted that once deployed over Ukraine, these early warning aircraft will introduce additional operational challenges for Ukrainian services, as they are likely to be directly targeted by Russian forces. Ukraine and the Czech Republic announced this week that they are collaborating to develop a group of optical reconnaissance satellites under the Constellation Project, an initiative born from a political agreement reached in October 2022 between the two governments. The collaboration, which is part of a broader defense cluster effort, has already paved the way for a joint space sector project that resulted in the formation of a new satellite monitoring group. A central component of the group is a series of Troll-type satellites, with plans to incorporate additional satellites developed in collaboration between Czech and Ukrainian experts. The first Troll satellite, produced by the Czech company TRL Space, was successfully launched earlier this year and is equipped with integrated hyperspectral cameras featuring a 10-centimeter lens that captures detailed images of the Earth's surface at a resolution finer than 5 meters per pixel. In parallel, work is underway for the DRAC satellite, being developed by members of the Czech Brno space cluster, with TRL Space acting as the main integrator. Designed specifically for the Ukrainian armed forces, the DRAC satellite will be built on a larger platform than the Troll counterpart and will feature a high-resolution camera capable of visible spectrum operations at resolutions better than 1 meter per pixel, although precise technical details, including the weight and other subsystem parameters, remain undisclosed for security reasons. It falls into the microsatellite category with a mass ranging between 50 and 150 kilograms. A strategic cooperation agreement has been finalized between Nammo, a prominent Norwegian manufacturer of artillery ammunition, and a Ukrainian defense enterprise. The deal was announced by Ukraine's Minister of Strategic Industries, Erlend Smetanin, and builds on already established collaborative efforts supported by both nations and expands the partnership to include a broader array of ammunition, components, and materials. The initiative is seen as a vital step towards enhancing Ukraine's capacity for domestic production of essential munitions. Smetanin expressed his gratitude to Nammo's leadership for their willingness to work with Ukrainian manufacturers and acknowledged high-level support from Norwegian state officials for the project. He also noted that Ukraine began mass production of 155mm ammunition last year, and in August 2024, there were reports indicating that production of 155mm shells using Nammo's technology was set to commence. The Norwegian government has facilitated the transfer of expertise by providing funding under the Nansen program, which enabled the sharing of technology with a Ukrainian partner whose identity remains confidential. Earlier this year, it was reported that Ukraine had produced 2.5 million mortar and artillery shells of various sizes, a development highlighted by the president during his address in the Verkhovna Rada as part of a broader strategy to expand national defense production and deepen cooperation with international allies. On March 19th, during a press briefing, President Zelensky confirmed that Finnish President Alexander Stubb and himself had finalized an agreement to form a coalition focused on enhancing civil protection measures. The new coalition aims to attract further international partners who can help Ukraine construct additional shelters to protect against the frequent aerial strikes by Russia. Ministers from both Finland and Ukraine formalized the agreement that day, with plans to reveal more specific details in the near future. Although information regarding the funding for these shelter projects has not been provided, the initiative was announced shortly after President Zelensky, accompanied by the First Lady, began a state visit to Finland. He stressed that both nations share a clear understanding of the challenges posed by their proximity to Russia and highlighted Finland's long-established expertise in civil defense measures. He also emphasized that Finland's leading role in the coalition is crucial, especially amid ongoing uncertainties about Russia's unwillingness to uphold a partial ceasefire focused on protecting civilians and energy infrastructure. A French marine technology firm is set to supply Ukraine with its tetrapulse electromagnetic sensors designed to identify unexploded munitions and mines in Ukrainian waters. In collaboration with Exail and Geomines, as part of a broader support initiative, the project will enhance underwater safety by deploying a system known as SEDAR, which accurately detects both metallic and non-metallic objects even in low visibility or when concealed underneath the seabed. Technology overcomes the limitations of traditional acoustic, magnometer, and video-based detection methods. An underwater remotely operated vehicle equipped with these sensors has demonstrated the system's comprehensive capabilities, ensuring that critical waterways and port areas remain secure for commerce. The tetrapulse sensors have already proven effective during trials with NATO navies and are expected to contribute significantly to clearing ports and sea routes vital for Ukraine's economic activities. L-Wave, specializing in electromagnetic and bionic sensor solutions, normally provides tools that not only detect underwater hazards but also monitor electromagnetic fields for infrastructure like wind farm cables. Russia's central bank decided to maintain its main interest rate at 21% on Friday, keeping borrowing costs at exceptionally high levels as the nation contends with rapidly rising prices. The economy has been experiencing a steady increase in prices, influenced by a surge in military expenditures and notable labor shortages. For the first time in 2 years, annual inflation climbed above 10% last month, and analysts expect average price rises of around 7 to 8% over the course of this year. The bank acknowledged that while some of the inflationary pressures have slightly subsided, they continue to be significant, and reducing inflation to its 4% target would require keeping monetary conditions tight for an extended period. In a follow-up press briefing, the central bank governor indicated that if the current inflation risks intensify, further increases in the interest rate might be necessary, although she emphasized that the current financial environment is already sufficiently constrained. The decision to hold rates at 21% follows a previous hike to that level in October, a move that had raised concerns among businesses and banks about its potential impact on economic growth, with some experts predicting a surge in corporate bankruptcies. President Vladimir Putin noted this week that defense and security spending in Russia now represents nearly 9% of GDP, with plans for military expenditures to rise by almost 30% in 2025. Several European officials have indicated that during the Trump administration, the United States has significantly reduced its participation in international initiatives designed to close gaps that allow Russia to bypass sanctions. According to sources familiar with the matter who requested anonymity, U.S. representatives were noticeably absent from multiple working groups formed by allies to address issues such as the procurement of weapon-making components and the enforcement of measures like the G7 price cap on Russian oil. It remains unclear whether this reduced engagement is a deliberate decision by the U.S. or the result of insufficient staffing, as some meetings were attended by lower-level officials with limited authority. Up next, we have international relations. The United States has ceased funding for a Yale University research team that was dedicated to tracking the locations of Ukrainian children who were forcibly displaced or deported to Russia. Since 2014, Russian authorities have been removing children from Ukrainian territories and subjecting them to a state-sponsored program aimed at erasing their cultural identity and re-educating them to assimilate to Russian society through methods that include military training and intensive ideological instruction. Nathaniel Raymond, the head of Yale's Humanitarian Research Laboratory, revealed in an interview that his team lost access to a comprehensive archive of data accumulated over the past 3 years, describing the funding cuts as a severe setback to efforts that document these crimes. The research group was tracking roughly 35,000 children believed to have been taken from Ukraine. A recent study from the lab documented 314 cases of children subjected to what has been characterized as a systematic program of forced adoption and re-education by Russian families. Reports from some sources indicated that access to data on tens of thousands of deported Ukrainian minors might have been compromised, prompting American lawmakers to write Secretary of State Marco Rubio. However, the State Department dismissed the reports as unfounded and asserted that the data remains under its control. Former Ukrainian Deputy Prosecutor General Yundus Mamedov warned that the termination of this funding could significantly hamper investigations into these violations and delay efforts to repatriate affected children, noting that such an act of forced displacement might qualify as that real bad thing that happened in the 1940s under international law. A member of the American Coalition for Ukraine's political committee also expressed deep concern, emphasizing that the Yale team's advanced tools and access to critical intelligence were essential for accurately locating and advocating for these children. According to the Children of War portal, Ukraine has identified around 20,000 displaced minors, with over 1,000 already returned, although most of those repatriated are from occupied areas rather than Russia. American President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held a phone conversation on Wednesday following the rejection of a comprehensive ceasefire proposal by Russian President Vladimir Putin. During the call, Trump characterized the discussion as highly constructive and lasting for about an hour, noting that the dialogue focused largely on aligning the demands and requirements of both Ukraine and Russia, a subject he had previously discussed with Putin in a call on Tuesday. At the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt emphasized the positive nature of the conversation, suggesting that ongoing talks had brought the involved parties closer to achieving peace. Subsequent statements from Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz revealed that technical teams are set to convene in Saudi Arabia in the coming days to explore ways to expand the ceasefire. It was also noted that Trump had pledged support to help Ukraine secure additional air defense systems and also proposed, without much elaboration, that the United States could assume responsibility for safeguarding Ukrainian power plants by taking control of them. On March 21st, South Korea's Yonhap news agency reported that Sergei Shoigu, the Secretary of Russia's Security Council, has arrived in North Korea, where he is set to engage in talks with leader Kim Jong-un and other officials. North Korea has increasingly established itself as a key military partner to Russia by providing artillery shells, missiles, and even personnel in return for oil and advanced rocket technology. The visit comes on the heels of recent high-level diplomatic exchanges between Moscow and Pyongyang, including a meeting earlier in the month between Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko and North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui, aimed at strengthening political contacts at the highest levels. These discussions occur as North Korea continues to support Russia militarily amid its ongoing war with Ukraine, with estimates suggesting that around 12,000 North Korean troops have been deployed in Russia's Kursk Oblast since last fall to counter Ukraine's cross-border operations initiated in August of 2024. And last item for this week, Vinnytsia District Administrative Court in Ukraine ruled on March 20th that the decision to prevent Ukrainian MP Petro Poroshenko, leader of the European Solidarity Party, from crossing the state border was unlawful, as reported by his lawyer Ihor Holovan. The court found that an earlier decision issued on January 16, 2025 by the head of the Border Guard inspectors at the Kyiv Border Guard Department of the 6th Volyn Detachment was invalid and has now been annulled. Holovan explained that the authority to regulate Poroshenko's border crossing lies with the head of state of the Border Guard Service, a fact that became clear during the court proceedings. According to his account, border guards had been strictly instructed to contact the head of the service immediately whenever Poroshenko appeared at a checkpoint, and if they could not reach the official, the matter was then escalated to Colonel Andrei Prostakov for further decision-making. Poroshenko had earlier claimed during a speech at the Rada in January that his passage had been denied unlawfully while he was en route to Brussels for a meeting with leaders of the European People's Party. In response, the Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada confirmed that Poroshenko had been on an approved business trip, with travel dates set from January 11th to January 15th, and the meeting held on January 13th to 14th. Following those developments, Poroshenko appealed the decision through the courts, and this was the resulting decision. And that's it for the main headlines this week. We will now move to the next segment.
Yeah, that would be me. Hello, guys. As always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. And boy, do we had a week. We are starting with the latest update on military aid. In the past 4 weeks, Germany has delivered the following to Ukraine: 3 Cheetah Sparks, 30 drone detection sensors, 30 Gerion RCS UGVs, 50 Vector UAVs, 24 FFG MRAPs, 2 mine plows, 2 Vcent 1MC mine clearing tanks, 2 border protection vehicles, 100 man-portable mine clearing systems, 10,000 rounds of ammunition for the Gepard and Cheetah Sparks, Iris TSL missiles for the Iris TSL M5 units, ammunition for the Leopard 1A5 main-battle tanks, ammunition for the Marder 1F3 IFVs, over 1,400 assault rifles, 8,000 120 millimeter mortar shells, 2,000 122 shells, 5,000 155 shells, 255 infrared binoculars, 556 laser rangefinders, and last but not least, 487,000 first aid kits. The German government also made public that they have pledged another 279 laser rangefinders and 10 anti-drone sensors and jammers. Sadly, the list is a little bit small, but still very much needed assistance. On the same day, the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine announced that Germany has financed and delivered 1,600 protective gabions, which is enough to reinforce a total of 8 kilometers of fortifications along the border, or to better protect critical infrastructure. Moving on to Friday, very good and big news. The Bundestag's Budget Committee has approved approximately 11 billion in additional military assistance for Ukraine between 2025 and 2029. The 11 billion euros is broken down into around 3 billion for additional military support this year, so for 2025, and around 8.2 billion in additional commitment appropriations, which are reserved for military assistance for Ukraine from 2026 to 2029. So basically, these enable Germany to conclude long-term contracts for Ukraine already now. And last but not least, during a visit to the Zaporizhia region, the German ambassador to Ukraine, Martin Jäger, has handed over a further 5 Volkswagen Amarok pickups worth more than 160,000 euros. They will now be used to respond to emergencies, restore infrastructure, or improve logistics in the region. And that's it for my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Germanade. We will now go to Bionade for an update on USAID.
All right, thank you, Joseph. Yeah, you all might remember we talked before about USAID and the ongoing legal battles, especially the last lawsuit was about the USAID funding. And on March the 18th, the federal court blocked the dismantling of USAID. In a significant legal blow to the Trump administration, the US District Judge Theodore Chung issued a preliminary injunction halting the efforts of the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, to dismantle the US Agency for International Development, USAID. Judge Chuang ruled that the executive branch's actions likely violated the US Constitution, specifically the principle that only Congress has the authority to create or eliminate federal agencies. As part of the injunction, the court ordered immediate restoration of email and computer access for all USAID employees, including those who have been placed on administrative leave. Also, he ordered a freeze on any further steps to dissolve or impair USAID without explicit congressional approval. The ruling came in response to a lawsuit filed in February 2025 by a coalition of current and former USAID employees, contractors, and foreign aid advocates. They argued that the administration's abrupt moves to dismantle USAID jeopardized critical humanitarian and developmental programs globally and lacked legal standing. On March 20th, 2025, the administration announced the intent to appeal. 2 days after the injunction, the Trump administration publicly announced its intention to appeal the Judge Chuang's ruling, and the administration officials reiterated their commitment to DOGE's broader agenda of reducing the size of government and consolidation of federal agencies, framing the effort as a necessary efficiency measure. However, legal experts predict the appeal process could take months, during which USAID's operations are expected to continue under court protection. On March 21st, 2025, delayed foreign aid payments are to resume. In a related development, reports confirmed that the US administration is preparing to finalize 671 million in foreign aid payments that has been delayed due to broader restructuring efforts and internal disputes over the USAID's future. These payments, which were supposed to be dispersed early in March under court order, had been delayed by nearly 2 weeks. This delay prompted a separate lawsuit filed by foreign aid organizations who accused the administration of unlawfully obstructing vital humanitarian work. The payments are now expected to be completed by March 21, following the mounting legal and public pressure. So as of the current state, USAID remains operational, with its staff reinstated and its programs resuming under the protection afforded by the court order, basically. However, the legal battle is ongoing, with appeal pending, and the agency's long-term future is still uncertain. We will see in the upcoming week how this is continuing, how and if USAID workers, not only in the US but also abroad, take up the work again. And we will report more on that. Back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Bionade. Okay, so the next segment we got is sort of the stuff I have in my notes that didn't make it all the way into the news. I call it extra bits, but it's not. No one has approved me doing that, so take it for what you will. So anyway, I've got several things. I'm just going to kind of go through them rapid fire. Some of them involve people here just because they're like better equipped to answer about it than I am. So here we go. Mr. German to Ukraine, you're first. You're up first, buddy. I got 2 things for you. Number one is, of course, the debt break deal. Let's start with the big news, right? I mean, everything's through now. We don't have to worry about if it passes here or there. It's done. Yeah.
I honestly don't know if the German president Steinmeier has already signed off on anything, because after the Bundesrat, he has signed off. But that's only a formality, so I really don't follow that anymore. Could have happened already. At most, it will be done basically starting Monday. Like I said, only a formality, so should be everything done now. Yeah, that's true.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I think we're very pleased to report that. It's something we've been talking about for a long time. It's an absolutely necessary component of Europe taking its security seriously going forward. And, kudos to Germany for, and, it was no small feat. It was a huge political issue in Germany that was overcome to do this. So it's, big news and a big deal. It's kind of a long process, so I think it hasn't been in the news as prominently as it probably should be, but it's really big news. So now that we've covered that, the next item I have for you is the confiscation of a Shadow Fleet tanker. The news was pretty sparse in the English-speaking press, so I just wanted you to cover everything that was said in the German press, because I assume they're going to know better than us. So go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as I know, the tanker, the Shadow Fleet tanker Ventin, stranded or anchored off the coast of Rügen since, I believe, mid-January. According to Spiegel, it has now been confiscated along with the 100,000 tons of crude oil, which are worth, I believe, something around 40 million euros. And the ship and the crude oil will now be transferred to German ownership. As far as I know, the measures are still ongoing. It's not finished yet. The spokesperson of the ministry responsible for it didn't want to confirm the reports on Friday. So yeah, I think it will happen. I mean, the reporting was there. He didn't deny the reporting. He just didn't want to confirm it. So yeah, I think that's the current standing.
Okay, so we'll keep everyone posted if we learn anything else about the Shadow Fleet tanker that was seized by Germany. And okay, so up next is Mr. Erlend. Hello, sir. So this week in Norway, we had a visit from President Zelensky, and I mentioned in the news report some NAMO stuff, but maybe I'll leave it to you if I missed anything. So if you want to cover all that stuff, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there were some really important bilateral meetings taking place during Zelensky's visit. And one of the kind of interesting pieces of information that came out was because a journalist at Norwegian paper Nettavisen, which is a web-based outlet, he got an interview with Commission, and he said that a relatively important news. So the NAMO corporation or license production of 155 millimeter artillery shells in Ukraine has been announced a while ago. The information we had previously was that production was going to start in 2026, but during this interview, Commission said that they will start this year. So that's a speed up of the whole process. I think that's maybe connected with the fact that Norway has increased the funding for this project. So that's good. There was another piece of info that was important as well. It's not necessarily related to Norway, but Commission said that the so-called Long Neptune has been tested twice, not once. Once was a target in Crimea, and then another one was a suspected Long Neptune strike already. It was the oil refinery. I don't remember the name right now. Yeah,
Tuase.
Yeah,
so
that's right. So yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah, thanks, Erlend. So that was a good update. It seemed like Zelensky had a nice tour of Norway and Finland, and it seemed like he was in good spirits. Any other observations? Yeah.
Oh yeah, like the one happy thing I can report just from friends that were in the parliament when he was there and actually met Zelensky said that they have never seen him so happy. So he came from a meeting with government representatives first, as you reported in the news report. Then he came to the parliament, and he was notably happy and in good spirit. So that's I don't know what that means, but maybe the government told him something good about the additional aid.
Yeah, we
hopefully.
definitely can't say that objectively, but it seems to imply like the meetings went well, I would
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah,
So that's good news.
definitely. Yeah.
Good. So yeah, that's Norway covered. So we got a few other things. I guess Colby, I'll let you feel this a bit, just because we can go on one of your famous rants about how Europe needs to get serious. But as far as I understand, Italy and Spain didn't agree to a $40 billion funding package for Ukraine from the EU. Is that accurate, or did I miss something?
Well, I think the list is longer than Italy and Spain. France certainly should be noted there, and certainly there are others as well that are sort of probably behind the scenes with the same views, but aren't taking the public criticism for that. But I mean, yes, I mean, whereas Germany has amended their constitution to remove this impediment to allow them more flexibility to deficit spend on their national defense requirements, which includes aid to Ukraine as well. The EU still has not done this because the EU as a whole has its own rules on how much countries can deficit spend, how much public debt they can accrue, and this is preventing countries, or at least some countries are using this excuse for why they can't give more support to Ukraine, because their budgets are already maxed out and they are not willing to either raise taxes or cut spending elsewhere. So they're saying, well, I mean, we need to be able to borrow more money so that we can increase our own defense spending and or provide more support to Ukraine. But here we are 3 years into the war, and it has still not happened that the EU has been able to come to an agreement on this question. And it doesn't seem likely that such an agreement is forthcoming. I know that seemed like there was a little bit of movement a while ago about how they were going to get this done, and there was talk about Hungary somehow being the main obstacle to this, but in reality, that's turned out not to be true at all. Setting aside what Hungary may or may not do, we have major European economies that are not seemingly on board with any of these efforts to get more aid to Ukraine. So I don't know, maybe the Europeans, want to say more about that. But, from my perspective, it's just basically the same thing that we've all become, at least us in North America, have become very frustrated with the EU about, is that there's just a lot of talk about things. They've released this white paper that's calling for 800 billion in additional spending, but there's no indication that this is actually going to happen. They've come out with a recommendation, they've come out with what they want to do, but the actual mechanics of implementing that, there seems to be very little progress on that, and there are a lot of roadblocks being thrown up by different members. So I don't know what the way forward is. I don't know how they're going to be able to reconcile all the different concerns that different countries seem to have about adopting this plan. So yeah, I'm personally not optimistic, but maybe the other members of the panel have a different perspective about how this might actually happen.
Yeah, if any of the Europeans care to comment, I'll call Colby off if you guys fix all this. That's our agreement. But if any of the Europeans want to comment, feel free.
No, I think Colby already summarized it very well, right? From the media reports, it seems like that France and Italy are the main countries taking the blame for what is happening. Reducing the planned 40 billion to voluntary 5 billion, and now even trying to block that. Although I really don't understand why somebody would want to block voluntarily aid, right? It's not like they have to pay for anything. They're still trying to block it for whatever reason. And yeah, nothing else to say, really.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say that, some of these countries, notably, I think in Italy, the sentiment is that there's really a big hope that this war just disappears and they don't need to think about it anymore. If you read the Italian media, it's overwhelmed by articles which basically insinuates that Trump is about to make peace in Ukraine, and that the only thing that should be done now is to support that effort. And the Rearm Europe package, and then subsequently 40 million or 40 billion, and then now 5 billion package to Ukraine is being seen in Italy, at least, as a prolongation of the war. That if this is passed, then the war will last for longer, and then we might provoke the ugly bear in Russia, or it's just going to be bad for the economy in Europe, and especially in Italy, because they think that Russia is so important for them, which it's not. Like, it's very not important for Italy. So it's ridiculous. And I fear that unless you get Italy to back this, you won't get Spain, Portugal, and France. They're very happy with this, unfortunately.
Would you agree, Erlend? I think I was kind of reading. I'm definitely not someone who follows this closely, but like Maloney's tone shifted a little bit this week. Like, she's been pretty, I don't want to say like super pro Ukraine, but she's been like pro Ukraine enough rhetorically, maybe not materially. And her tone shifted a bit this week, or no?
A little bit, yeah. And she's pushing so she wants to be some sort of bridge builder between Europe and the new US situation. I don't know what stake she has in the relations, transatlantic relations right now. If you look at what Italy has contributed to defense in Europe, Trump should be all over Italy. There is no materializing plans of reaching 2%, and you can just forget about the 3 or 5% which Trump is talking about, right? So I don't understand really why she believes she can be that big bridge builder. Maybe because she's from a far right environment and has supporters on the far right. But in general, the opinion in Italy is not very positive towards Ukraine. Unfortunately, there are lots of very strong supporters, but the majority of the opinion is either there should be peace, no war, or very pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian. So I think she's struggling because of the support she needs from the government as well. Remember that all the three parties, I'm not saying Meloni, but the three parties in government have traditionally been very pro-Russian. So it's someone can say it's a kind of a miracle that she's been managing to keep the support for Ukraine for this long, and I'm truly grateful for that, because it could have been a big problem for the EU. But right now, I don't think she probably doesn't feel like she has the political capital to push this thing through. It gets a lot of opposition in Italy. The whole rearmament thing is very unpopular.
Yeah, I think that's all good analysis. So thanks, Erlend, for that. So just a couple other things. So Putin had a business talk this week. Not much was covered. I guess I'll just like nothing really new. Basically, he said like the sanctions are going to be on us for a long time. We shouldn't expect them to go anywhere anytime soon. He was like basically talking to his like the oligarchs, right? That's who he's talking to. It's like a big expensive dinner where all the oligarchs are gathered in a room, and he's explaining to them what's going on. And he's basically saying like there are some foreign companies who want to come back, which I don't think is super true, but like you get the idea. He's trying to talk to them, and that like he said you're going to be protected. Basically, like we're going to make sure that any market share that was lost, like Russian businesses will keep. And he said like I'm worried about the economy cooling down too much, so I'm not going to let the economy cool down. I'm not going to let what he's implying there is like the central bank, I'm not going to let them raise interest rates, because that's what they've been advocating. You might say like the most experienced economists in Russia, the ones who have been managing their economy pretty well through this whole thing, have been advocating to raise the interest rate for some time. And the industrialist class, the oligarchs, have been basically saying like, no, you can't do that. That'll screw us. So that's kind of been the issue. And I would say that based on these remarks, the issue is still pretty decisively in the realm of like he's going to support the war industry basically over what the economists are saying. And then that's pretty much it. He basically just kind of said, like, we're not going to count on the international system to work with us anytime soon. So we're going to like brace for the long haul, something like that. And then there was what I'm calling like just Ukrainian politics I don't want to talk about. That's like kind of a segment I've had a few times. But I reported on it a little bit in the news. I just wanted to like give a little bit more context there. So Poroshenko, if you guys remember last week, I mentioned that there's been some pretty strong evidence that members of the Trump administration are, or people aligned with Trump at least, are talking to opposition members of the Ukrainian government, right? Like influential members that are opposed to the current government. Um, and last week, I was pretty like adamant that like it didn't work very well because a lot of the politicians who they approached made public statements that were in favor of Zelensky. So now the little update with that is kind of just like this week, Poroshenko made some public statements that were kind of against Zelensky. He basically said, like, I don't really like what Zelensky's doing. He's turned into a dictator. Like, I could work with Trump if you put me in power. Or I don't know if he said that exactly, but like basically that like we should work with Trump better and stuff like that. Like we should do things a different way. And I don't like Zelensky and he's being a dictator, basically. And so that seems to be caused by two things. One thing I already mentioned, that they tried to restrict his movement out of the country, which a court ruled was kind of unjust. So again, I'm the furthest person to have an opinion in Ukrainian politics. I'm not someone super familiar with it. But I would just say that the court said that they came down on him too hard on the border thing. So that seems to provide some substance to what he's saying about them being a little too hard on him. And then the other thing was that they charged him with like sanctions basically that are threatening to take like most of his businesses and money and property. So he's pretty like, I would say, bothered by those sanctions and stuff, and it seems like he's kind of making noise for that reason. It's like kind of the broadest analysis of it. Bionade, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So basically, in the sanctions, it was an asset freeze. So all of Poroshenko's assets and financial holdings within Ukraine have been frozen. This means he cannot access or use his bank accounts, properties, or business interests domestically. And as you know, Poroshenko has a couple of business ventures in Ukraine and internationally. As for example, Roshen, which is making chocolate, and you basically find in every Ukrainian city. And the other thing they did is restrictions on financial transactions. Poroshenko is banned from conducting financial transactions, including the transfer of funds and other assets, both within Ukraine and internationally, where Ukrainian jurisdiction applies. Then they put a ban on capital withdrawal. So basically, he's prohibited from restoring capital or moving any assets out of Ukraine. And then they put on more economic restrictions on him, limiting his ability to engage in certain business activities and contracts within Ukraine, particular these involving state-owned enterprises, sectors deemed critical to national security.
And Bionade, again, like I certainly don't have an opinion on this. I don't know if you do, but like, do we know why they did? Is there like any foundation?
So the official reason cited for these sanctions was alleged involvement in actions that undermine Ukraine's national security and sovereignty. With some government sources accusing Poroshenko of indirectly aiding Russian interests. However, Poroshenko strongly denies these accusations, calling the sanctions politically motivated and unconstitutional, framing them as an attempt to silence the opposition.
Okay, so nothing specific, but just that.
Basically, it's under the guise, and this is why it's so outrageous, and why also people from inside of the European leadership called this out, and like there were like some people in the European Parliament who called this out. They basically put him on a list with pro-Russian oligarchs, right? And Russian oligarchs put more or less almost the same sanctions on him. Didn't arrest him, but like put him on this kind of lists, and
Right. So I guess you
It's-
might be able to say that, like, from an outside perspective, it looks kind of excessive, even if we don't know, we don't have all the
absolutely,
information the government has, but it
absolutely.
looks pretty.
To everyone I spoke about this, who is like knows people from Ukrainian politics or like something involved, many people said like it's really, really, really excessive. And I personally, when I think last week, even when you talked about it last week, the week before, Poroshenko even said when Trump was approaching them, he was one of the people who said basically, no, we're
Right. Yeah, he was.
not having votes anytime soon. But I don't think. I mean, this is the thing, right? Like he said in the constitution, it is written there will not be a vote soon, and after the war, that what was this about? And this was, I don't know if it was aiding Zelensky or if it was just like honoring the constitution, right? But yeah, I probably, in my opinion, this is a punch back from Poroshenko, and
Yeah. So I think,
we
like, in summary, if we could wrap it all up, right? Like, the government has done a really good job so far of being careful and united when it comes to dealing with outside governments and meddling in their internal affairs, like, while
Yeah.
this war is going on, which is really good. That's helped them a lot. And I think these types of like, coming down on this politician pretty hard like this is causing maybe some dissent that might cause a
I mean,
problem down the road.
we have to remember it's not only one politician, right? It's the former president. It's the directly
Right.
predecessor of Zelensky.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. Yeah. So just like that, I think speaks to just kind of a broader issue that, like, if Ukraine isn't careful, that there are outside forces that are looking to exploit any cracks that might show. So,
Yeah.
that's I'm not trying to, like, report on this for political reasons so
No,
much
no.
as just from that angle, I think it's important.
Absolutely.
So, anything else
Absolutely.
you want to say before we wrap that up?
Yeah, I'm just wanted to remind and make the point that Poroshenko is well connected, and his party, his political party, is a party of the called European Unity. I think they also like work in some organizations together and are quite connected already with Europe, because they also wanted to work with Europe, right? Like was a president, the first one who really was like acting in this kind of interest after the revolution. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah. So, I encourage people who to look into sources that are more knowledgeable than me on the matter if you want to have a more nuanced opinion about it. But I did my best to help you guys understand, like, kind of from, like, the bottom line in terms of what it might mean in terms of what's going on with the invasion. Okay, so that I think covers. I got a couple more. Oh, the last thing I'll just mention is I mentioned there was a U.S. statement in a few days they're going to meet. They clarified, or various sources have clarified, the Russians, I believe, also the Ukrainians, and definitely the U.S. That the 24th in Saudi Arabia. So I guess tomorrow for pretty much everyone will, or maybe today if you're living somewhere crazy. Sorry, I should say that. But yeah, it'll start on the 24th. So that is pretty much it for all the extra news. Does anyone have any comments on all that stuff before we move on? Like, wrapping up stuff?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gesh. So I believe, sir, you're going to talk about like the Russian. You watch Russian forces through various sources, and I think you're going to talk specifically about drones. Is that all correct?
Yes, I will go a bit into Russian drone usage and a bit into Ukraine, like drone units, more of the force structure, not like the usage. That's not my specialty. I don't really watch that many videos, but I watch who is posting the videos, or like which subunits are involved, and like, yeah, how it's all structured, more like that. And I think I will dive a little bit into that. And I want to start first with, I mean, we are going back to Kursk here. As we all know, the Ukrainians have suffered a lot of logistical losses in Kursk, which were especially inflicted by one unit, and that was Rubicon. I mean, if you have read Andrew's stuff, he has written extensively about Rubicon. I can recommend it if you're interested in their tactics, etc. He's describing them very well on his Twitter account, Andrew Perpetua. But yeah, Rubicon is a quite new development of the Russian Ministry of Defense. It's a way that the Russians try to organize the drone units better in the front sectors. That's the primary purpose. It's I think the full name is now Rubicon Center of Unmanned Systems, and they were formed in late 2024, mid to late 2024. And in the end, the Russian goal is to have such a Rubicon Center on each of the front sectors. So the one that we have witnessed most was the one from the North Group. You have to know the Russians divide the front in several army groupings: the North Group, the West Group, the South Group, then the Center Group, then the South Group again. Yeah, it's really funny there. And then the Dnipro grouping and the Zaporizhia grouping, etc. And they plan to have such a Rubicon unit on every such sector, because what the Russians are suffering from right now is often quite a lot of disconnect between the drone units, whereas Ukraine has achieved more cohesion. They have more organizations in the drone forces. I mean, they have managed to form an unmanned systems forces, where the Russians are, I think, with the Rubicon, they're kind of trying to achieve the same as the Ukrainians. That's something we can actually witness a lot. Whenever, I mean, that's quite natural in a war. Whenever one side achieves something, whenever one side innovates and the other side realizes, hey, this is working well, we should maybe do this as well. And I think this is the Russian way to do that, to bring more organization in within their drone units, to have a better command structure. And something else, I mean, the Russians are also forming dedicated drone regiments. I sadly can't really tell you more about that other than this info, because we don't really have much more info other than this. We got a report that they are forming the 7th UAV regiment, but other than that, sadly, nothing else has appeared. That was like half a year ago already, so I'm quite surprised by that. And it might be the case that they have abandoned this plan by now, but I don't think so, honestly. Yes, I want to also dive a bit into the differences between the Russian drone the Russian structure of the drone forces and the Ukrainian structure. Wait, I need to collect some of my thoughts.
No worries, take your time. Appreciate it.
So yeah, you have to know the Ukrainians in the last 1.5 years have tried to, like, first at the beginning, like in the first year or the first 1.5 years, the Ukrainians tried to give every single brigade a drone company. And within the last years, in the last 2 years, I think, they then tried to expand upon the company towards a battalion. They have by now basically achieved that for every single ground forces brigade. I think there's like only a handful where this isn't the case. 1 or 2 of the tank brigades, to be exact. So the Ukrainian brigades have actually a lot of integrated drone support, whereas the Russians are lacking this. Like this, every brigade having their dedicated UAV battalion. for example, the Russians don't really have any drone battalions outside the VDV divisions. The VDV divisions in general are a bit more specialized when it comes to drones. They have a bit. It seems to me that they have a bit more capabilities in general, in comparison to the ground like the armed forces brigades for the Russians, and the armed forces brigades, they have at most a drone company. So they are basically at the status where the Ukrainians have been 2 years ago in terms of the size of the drone support. And they are more reliant on more disconnected drone teams within the units. And yep, that's a short comparison between the current structure of Russian and Ukrainian drone forces. And I also want to bring up one point about the Ukrainian drone forces that is interesting. There has been an interesting development. I mean, most people don't know that, but there are by now 2 unmanned systems forces within the Ukrainian army. One is the separate unmanned systems forces, and another one are the unmanned systems forces under the ground forces. And I'm honestly unsure what I should think of that development. But yeah, we will kind of have to see about that if this force structure proves to make a lot of sense, because there recently has been a space from Kriegsforscher. The people who don't know Kriegsforscher, he's a sergeant in a quite prominent UAV company, Owls. They have recently left the 36th Marine Brigade and are now joining the 20th UAV Regiment. And he has said that a lot of the separate UAV formations are not really focusing on the stuff that makes sense. Like when you would think about a separate drone unit, you would think they have more long range capabilities. They're more they're maybe working on the long range logistic stuff, or more the command post, etc. But some of those formations don't really have any of those capabilities, and are basically filling the roles that might be better filled by the integrated UAV battalions of the brigades and the ground forces. So that's a bit of a question if the current structure in that sense is the most efficient, but I don't have a definitive answer for that, to be honest. So yeah, that's a quick overview over the structure of drone forces in both the Ukrainians and the Russian forces. If there's any questions.
Do we have any questions from the panel first?
No, rather a comment that we had an internal kind of seminar session about similar things, where some of this stuff was mentioned also by geschlittert, and we will probably sometime soon release that conversation, which was about the use of unmanned systems, and both in the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russian armed forces, but more focus on the Russian integration, both pre-2022 and post-2022, from a French scholar that is an associate of Tochnyi. So yeah, Gesh was a part of that conversation, and so was also some other interesting people. So hopefully we can get that published as a podcast standalone soon.
Yeah, there was some really interesting technical stuff as well in there, like which kind of software the units are using, and how that has developed, and where they get that software from. That yeah, but I'm really looking forward for that to be released.
Yeah, I was listening to the raw audio today, and I don't like to self-brag, but I want to brag about Tochnyi here because I think that is probably going to be the most comprehensive podcast episode session that I've ever seen or listened to about this topic. So I think that's going to be some gold content there.
Yeah, it was really good. I want it released on a Wednesday, so we'll see. I think look for it on a Wednesday.
Yeah, it needs quite a lot of polishing because this was
We still have to edit it.
It
That's why I
wasn't.
just think we were going to bring it up today, but we're excited about it. It's true.
Yeah, it has to be now. It has to be edited and released. But yeah, it's very good, and I'm looking forward also to having some of these people on the stream in the future. We've gotten some interesting new people in the crew, and hopefully they can. I know that they want to contribute, so we'll see.
Do you
Also-
talk about me?
You're not new.
No? Okay.
Who's
I
that
also
new
want
hotshot?
to add a little teaser that Artem, which is tracking the interceptions of ISR drones and also Lancets, done by mostly FPVs, but also some fixed wing drones. He's going to publish a follow-up article soon. I think it just needs some graphic work, and then it's ready to be published.
Published on our website, tochnyi.info.
Yes, and it will also be in Ukrainian on Militarny.
What? Are you serious?
Yep, same procedure as last time. So that's a nice series of articles.
I also got another topic if we have the time.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to maybe talk about some recent movements in troops. if that's all right.
Okay, I can open the map so you can just talk.
No, I can.
Okay.
If it's all right, I open them up.
Yeah, sure.
That I have it.
Always interesting to. Okay, I'll open. There.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What has been happening recently? It's not too recent, and it was kind of everyone knew it was coming. Basically, everyone knew that this would happen. Okay, but I hope I haven't talked about this on stream before. But the Russian 8th Army, like this is actually one of the biggest moves in quite a long time, because basically the whole Russian 8th combined army has been moved. 8 combined army have been has been moved away. And why this has happened is they were operating on those two town lines. The 25th Motor Rifle Division was operating on the Ospinivka line, and the 150th Division was operating on this town line towards Korakova and Dachna. But what you can see is, like, the further you go into here, there's something. I mean, there's quite a geographic reason for this move, because basically the whole front line consolidates. Or it's all moving together, and it's the simple reason there's not that many units needed anymore from the Russians to be holding here. So there was this big speculation: where would all these units move to? Most people thought, or some people thought, they would all be moving towards Toretsk, because let's say like that the Russians have suffered a lot of losses in Toretsk. There are mainly 3 brigades in there from the Russians: the 1st, the 9th, and the 132nd. And they are all part of the 51st Combined Arms Army. That's the DPR army. So they have even less worth to the Russians than the average Russian soldier, which means quite a lot. And they have suffered immense losses in this area. So most people were thinking, okay, most people who who deal with this matter. We're thinking likely those two divisions move towards one division towards Toretsk and one division towards New York. At first, it also looked like this. Some weeks ago, we have seen the first geolocations of a video from the 102nd Motor Rifle Regiment in Toretsk. That's part of the 150th Motor Rifle Division. And since then, basically all other subunits have arrived as well, together with actually the support units of the army. The artillery brigade of the army has also started operating and shelling Ukrainian targets in the area. However, what was a bit of a surprise. Okay, well, what you have to know, the units operating in this area here, in the East Pokrovsk direction, are also part of the 51st Combined Arms Army. It's the 5th Motor Rifle Brigade and the 110th Motor Rifle Brigade. So most people thought, okay, maybe those units here would be relieved. They would recuperate for some time and then moved over here. So it's a more cohesive. So the units there have more cohesion because they're all in the same army command, and they hopefully, like from this perspective of the Russians, have better cooperation. However, at the end of January, or since the end of January, better to say it like that, we could observe movements from New York, from the 9th Motor Rifle Brigade towards the western Pokrovsk direction. There has been some MIAs in the right up here, to be honest, in the, let's say, the area of not well-being. Like this area here is like where the Russians have the greatest force concentration and also suffer immense losses. And so both the 9th Brigade from New York has been moved here, and also the 1st Brigade from Toretsk has been started to being moved over here. Like this all started around the 15th of January. And now the question is, how manned are the new positions in Toretsk and New York, and who is actually taking over the Russian positions in New York? Because the 20th division has actually been moved over here and has started to attack Tarasivka, etc. I mean, the recent geos in Tarasivka have actually been from the. It was it actually? Yeah, that's sorry. That channel here is actually a channel who is attached to the 33rd Motor Rifle Regiment, which is a subunit of the of the 20th Division. So yeah, it's a lot of movement going on, and now especially also with Kursk being rather, the Kursk incursion has been mostly repelled, sadly, and the huge question now remains, where are all those units going? I mean, we have been seeing recently that the Ukrainians have started some incursions into Belgorod. It's unsure how many Russian forces that can tie up, and now there's a huge question mark for the future, where both the Ukrainians and the Russians will move all the forces that were concentrated in Kursk. You have to know, more than half of the Russian VDV, of the airborne forces, was in Kursk. Most of the marine infantry was in Kursk, with the 810th, the 155th, the 40th Brigade partly, and now it's a huge question, where is all this going? And this also is a reiteration on the point, while the Russians didn't move many units away from Pokrovsk direction itself to Kursk when the invasion happened, they for sure committed a lot of units that had been moved to Pokrovsk otherwise. And while it's hard to assess who exactly committed more in Kursk, for who it was a bigger price to be paid, I think it's rather. I would be critical of people who can assess with full certainty that the Ukrainian operation in Kursk was a failure. because the Russians have committed a ton of forces there.
And also at the same time, we've seen them slow down both in Toretsk and in the Pokrovsk direction.
Yeah, I mean,
so
the situation in Pokrovsk, like they haven't moved since I think when was it? Let me check. Mid-January. I think mid-January. No, end of January. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, Ukraine started an assault towards Shevchenko and also what's the other one?
Yeah, there's
city there?
constant Ukrainian counterattacks going on in Shevchenko, Pishane, Kotlina, Udachne, Uspenivka, etc. There's like the Pokrovsk front is as slow as it hasn't been since Avdiivka, I think.
Yeah, and also that area. So if you zoom in on the salient that the Russians have, yes, this one. If you go to until today on the map, you'll see the situation how it is right now.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before, but
Yeah,
it's considerably worse for the Russian now because Ukrainians are. They don't have control over Shevchenko, but neither does the Russians, so they can't use that road that much. And the Ukrainians are assaulting the road that is going into the pocket that the Russians have towards the train tracks. And that is a huge problem for the Russians because this swamp area, which you see between Uspenivka and Shevchenko and also Pishane, there's no real natural crossing point towards that advance that they have towards the rails.
Yeah, especially also if the Ukrainians get closer to this road. Like, yeah, I think I've said this before as well, but in this area, Selidova is basically the supply hub for all the Russian forces in basically this area.
If Ukraine manages to move toward, if they can take control over Shevchenko and also move from the west, I think that salient, or what do you call it, the advance that they have towards the rails would have to be abandoned.
Yep, they have putting a lot of pressure on it. I mean, we don't know what will happen next. The Ukrainians have also put a lot of forces there. Also a lot of very elite forces. So, but it has paid off for them. They have stopped basically all Russian advances here. The Russians are still slowly advancing down here, and especially, I mean, towards Kurakova, the situation is a bit more critical. Or, now it's, I guess, the Andrivka front. And so, yeah, it remains to be seen if they can also be slowed on their well enough. Oh, and something else. The Russians have now committed again 2 of the VDV regiments that have been basically recuperating for the last 9 months, namely the 247th and the, what was it again? Don't have it on the top of my head, but they're both part of the 76th Air Assault Division, and they have been now renewed assaults in the Kamianske area. They are attacking Mali. They have taken Piatikatki and are now attacking heavily in this front sector. And it remains to be seen if they can be thrown back again by the Ukrainians. But yeah, there has been some renewed action there as well.
This area is heavily defended by both sides, so at least there Ukraine has relatively good defenses compared to what they had, for instance, after Velika Novosilka.
Yep. No, Velika Novosilka is sadly a very different story. But yeah, basically along this whole line, the Russians have renewed their offensive operations with both I think over there is the 506th and 429th Motor Rifle Regiment they are attacking, and over here it's the 2 regiments of the 76th VDV Division. But for now, I think in the recent days, the Ukrainians have managed to slow them down again, and and hopefully they will throw them back again.
So Do you have any comments about Toretsk? Because a lot of things have been happening there, and I guess so. We have this one guy, Audax, that is.
he basically lives in Toretsk.
Yeah,
I think
so
he has literally done more than 1,000 geos in this one town.
yeah, and at some point we probably should try and get him on the stream and talk about Toretsk and what happened there. But did the Russians push a little bit, the Ukrainians a little bit back again now recently, or
Yes,
that-
it appears so.
Yeah.
It appears so. I mean, I like if you want someone who is an expert, you 100% have to talk or write to Audax. I think he's also on Twitter. He would be, I think, more than happy to answer most questions. But yeah, they have retaken the positions here in the high rises, whereas the Ukrainians are attacking in Zabalka. So for now, it seems the 150 motor rifle division is doing rather well. During their rotation, the Ukrainians managed to retake some of the positions. They were basically nearly pushed out of all of Toretsk before that, as far as we know. And now they have more footholds within the city. But it's a really, it's nearly impossible to really assess the situation in the town. It's house to house fighting. It can be that one house is controlled by one side and the other house is controlled by the other side. It's extremely fluid. It's positions change hand often as well, and yes, really, it's hard. It's really hard to tell what's going on within the town, even though we have so many geolocations.
This is also a town that sadly is being slowly, completely razed to the ground.
To rubble.
Yeah, it's building after building is basically being rubble, being turned to rubble by both sides. Because if there are Russians holding up positions inside buildings, Ukraine is going to attack that. So there's not going to be a lot left of this city, unfortunately.
Will be akin to Bakhmut, I suppose. But
yeah, but tactically, at least the Russians have struggled greatly here. It seemed at some point that the whole city was taken by the Russians, and then, and for unknown reasons, it seemed like they couldn't commit at least enough forces to hold on to it.
Yep. Oh, there's also, I mean, this is a rather small point, but there's also some interesting information about the units in there. Several Russian units who are fighting in this area are rifle regiments of the DPR. And if you think of bad equipment, they've got it worse. Like, those regiments don't even get, like, they have literally zero support equipment, and all they got is basically the rifle and some grenades. They don't even have mortars attached to the unit. It's really incredible. Like, it shows again, like, how little value the Russians often put into the life of their soldiers, because they're not providing anything to those. We have seen several support that those soldiers are just being sent in, and they're not expected to come back, so to say.
Yeah, there was an interview with a Russian POW that was published by Da Vinci, by the Da Vinci unit, where he said that he was in the areas of Toretsk. He didn't even know where, because they didn't give him information about where. He was there several times. He was injured, brought back, and then he was sent to Pokrovsk and got captured finally. But he said that, yeah, they're just sending in people with no training, 40, 50-year-old gear. So I assume that means, AK-74s that are very ancient, and they didn't really understand their mission, except from like one building needs to be taken or kept.
Yep.
So seems like they're just throwing people into the city and hoping for the best, which of course, if you don't have support units that can provide fire support, your infantry is going to have a lot of problems because they're going to be approached by Ukrainian infantry, and Ukraine is committing quite elite forces into Toretsk, so they're not going to have a good time.
I think Audax told me recently that actually some units have been now moved away again from Toretsk and rotated away. So that's I need to check again. I don't really have a complete force overview of the Ukrainian units in Toretsk in my mind right now, so I can't really comment on that. But yeah, it remains to be seen also how the new Russian forces conduct their offensives within Toretsk, how they do it different. I mean, we have recently seen the first mechanized assault in Toretsk since basically months, because it's now a division of the ground forces instead of one of the DPR units. So there will also be a change of tactics and within Toretsk, and the battlefield there will change. But yeah, that's I think basically it, what I wanted to tell. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
There's a small development in Luhansk Oblast.
Oh, yeah. Nadia.
Yeah. So Ukraine
Yes.
lost this little, it's not even a town, it's a just village, 4 houses. And I don't know if that can be a village, but yeah, so
No.
this place has been fought over for a very long time though.
Yep.
And Ukraine lost it recently, but then recaptured it, I guess, during the last few days. The 3rd Assault Brigade released a video of them basically going into all the positions that have been contested there. And yes, I assume that's going to be updated tomorrow on the map there.
Yep. There's a lot of heavy fighting going on over here. Although there's been a small change of concentration for the Russian forces in this area. They have now moved some forces towards Stopova, Novoselivka, like basically the 153rd Tank Regiment, which was around here in Pishane, and also the 27th Motor Rifle Brigade, which captured Lutsova. They likely moved both of them. Well, I'm not sure about the 27th, but for sure the 153rd Regiment, they moved them to Kislivka and are now trying to assault in this area as well and move towards the 2nd Pishane.
Yeah, and then the objective would probably be to push towards Kupiansk, which would be a big problem for Ukraine. So yeah.
Yeah, but they have been struggling heavily there.
Yep.
They since when is Sintkivka not captured? I think it's like, let me check. Yep.
A year.
More than a year, like 1.5 years. They are not exactly that successful in the Kupiansk push. But yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to Q&A next. Real quick, though, Mr. Erlend, do we want to talk at all about our thread on the Airbase, or did I cover that pretty well in the early news report?
Well, I can pull it up on the website because we mirrored it there. I think it's better to view it. But yeah, we did a little battle damage assessment session. Was it Saturday? Or was it Friday? No, it was Friday. From the Engels Airbase attack. Let me just get the... 1 sec.
You can follow along at Tochnyi.info.
So we had some help from people that are quite good with geospatial analysis. Actually, one of them is arriving right now, so maybe better to hand over to him. But yeah, we had a session where we went over the released satellite images from Maxar compared it to previous images, and also some information about the different munitions that are stored in such bases. And we could, so one of the things we did was that we measured the length of these containers that are going inside this facility, which was clearly blown to pieces by whatever struck the depot. Those containers are the same length as the containers for the KH-101, which would add up because this is a facility that is being used to supply the long-range strategic bombers that are taking off from the Engels-2 airbase and launching cruise missiles into Ukraine. I would say this is a very significant air raid performed by Ukraine. There are several videos of Ukrainian drones flying in the area just before the attack and also during the attack. And we can only assume that that was the way they attacked. We have no evidence that any cruise missiles were used, even though that has been reported. I cannot see any piece of evidence that this was more than drones. So, Mr. Daniele, is there something you want to add? You also published a thread on this.
Good evening to everyone. I want to say that I contributed very little on this one because the analysis was already well ahead, and so in my case I concentrated on why this strike was so successful, because many people at the beginning were convinced that somehow Neptune or some other kind of missile was involved, because the destruction level was massive. And instead, as you have said, the site has been probably hit only by long-range drones. And so in a thread that I created, essentially I shown a potential avenue on how things may have been unfold. If you look at different sites, from Toropets to Engels-2 Airbase and many others, you can see them through satellite using Sentinel satellites, using a visible image, so essentially optical image, which is affected by clouds, or you can use a synthetic aperture radar. And essentially what I was doing in the last few months was to try to observe some particular areas where strike have been very successful, and try to observe if through SAR images you can see any particular change that can help in understand how much is what type of activity is occurring. And of course, you have to imagine that we are using very low resolution SAR. The image that Erlend is showing here is for Sentinel-1, the Copernicus program from European Union, and that's the first one was from Engels. This one instead is from Toropets. Now, if you look at this one, you can see, I don't know if you can put full screen, but you can see the site is very well visible, and then there is like a kind of trail of very bright dots that goes through Toropets, and that essentially is a train. There are different railroad within Toropets, and the same happen in many other ammo depot. So it's very possible to study and observe at which frequency and also in what capacity these type of sites are affected. And for example, this is another the 719th ammo depot that was hit and completely destroyed. You can see these are a sequence of optical images, and you can see until the full destruction of the site, you can't see what what's going on. You may see if they are excavating or doing something like that, but you can't see movement of things. Sometimes you can see like trains because you can see different colors, but it's very difficult unless you have very good resolution and also clear sky. This is the same site, but from SAR, and you can see that there is like a vertical trail and some dots that moves on the top. That is a railroad, and that's the track that leads the train inside the ammo depot. And there is also a very bright signal that appear quite periodically, and that probably is one of the blast door when it's open. So the entire thread essentially try to explain to the public that this type of information are also one of the reasons why it's so important intelligence. For sure, there is also other ways to gather this information. One reader suggested, of course, that there are people on the ground as well, but of course there are a lot of sites, and also it's very dangerous to have people on the ground. You may corrupt someone, but you cannot trust 100%. Instead, this type of information you can gather them, and also this is why Putin was so much inclined to try to cut this type of aid from West to Ukraine, because using high resolution images, which is not the Sentinel one, which are much better, they can actually improve their ability to strike. Of course, SAR is not unjammable. It can go through clouds, through everything, but can be jammed. And if you go down, there is an example. That one. This was in Crimea a year ago in summer. Brian also remember this as well. We were trying to understand what's going on, and here, essentially, the Russians, for some reason, they were trying to obscure SAR imagery from satellites using a jammer. Now it can work, but of course you expose also your asset, and it takes resources to do so. So you cannot deploy essentially everywhere. But this is just to show also that, of course, for every method there is a counter method to try to hide yourself. And the trend essentially goes across all these. In particular, also show the fact that, yes, you say that this is one of the smallest class of long-range drone that Ukraine have, but I think makes sense because the site was packed with missile, and all the structures that have been destroyed, apart the bunkers, these structures that you can see here, these are metallic frame covered with very thin plastic or metal, so it's a nearly foldable structure. It's not intended for storage, but more for integration, maintenance, and so on. And you can see the amount of stuff that is also around. So the fact that they use the slow-moving drone makes sense, because the target was not as much as hardened as, for example, torpedoes.
Yeah, and our assumption is that this facility was used to prepare missiles that are being taken out of storage to bombing raids, because you can see containers moving in and moving out on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, in missile integration, most of the time you have long, even when you produce them, and Iskra plant, which we covered recently in another work, is very similar. It's gigantic, but essentially the same trend. You start from the back, you exit from the front of the building with the missile ready, essentially.
And I want to make sure we clarify real quick. To our knowledge, the shockwave was huge, so it's very probable that some of the planes were damaged, but we don't see any evidence of destroyed planes in the airbase, right?
Yeah,
there's zero evidence of that. And there was I also want to caution about the post that was flying around about 2 pilots that were allegedly killed. I think it's been debunked. It was they were killed, but they were not pilots. They were engineers working with the Tu-95s. So yeah, they, these are important assets, and It takes many, many years to educate to this capacity that they were operating in, but they weren't pilots. And then there was a rumor about splinters that fell or damaged the aircrafts, but I mean, there's absolutely zero evidence of that.
I just want to clarify for YouTube overlords that Erlend meant that they went to the dacha in the sky. Cool. So thanks. We'll now go to, I think, Q&A. Yeah? Or did you have any other stuff you wanted to say about this before we close out?
Well, I just want to say that this was a very successful attack. I mean, it wasn't the same amount of damage that was in Toropets, but also this facility wasn't storing the same volume, even though what they store cause a lot of destruction and problems for Ukraine. And the hope is that this will at least hamper the Russian efforts to raid Ukrainian cities with missiles, and also hopefully some of the glide bombs that they had in this base was destroyed, and they're not going to be able to use them to destroy Ukrainian cities. So this was a big success, and also very curious why it succeeded this time, because Ukraine has attacked this facility many times with drones.
Yeah, the Russians claimed it was a super large scale attack, and it's like bigger than they'd ever seen. But they say a lot of crazy stuff, so it's hard to know like if that's true. But maybe that's why. But who knows?
Well, there's not really any evidence of that either. There's one footage of a drone that was shot down, and normally in these cases you will see a lot of videos of drones if there are if it's a massive attack, and also in not just around the airbase, but the drones have to fly through Russia, quite a substantial amount of range.
That's a good point. You're right. There is evidence kind of against that it was a large scale attack. So yeah, you're right. It's kind of curious why it happened. It worked this time.
And that's interesting. Maybe Ukraine has done their homework very well for this one this time, hopefully. And hopefully that we'll see more of this.
Yeah,
Danielle, do
You know why it was successful? I know why.
Why?
Do you want to know? Taurus.
You're making the announcement here.
Confirmed.
He's just lying to get everyone to stop bothering him about Taurus.
No, I'm dead
hey,
serious. 500 missiles attacked them. I know.
Now, when will Germany send Taurus?
Sorry,
We did.
Daniela, did you want to add anything?
Oh no, I was thinking that there is also a political reason behind attacking now, especially KH-101, because they are one of mostly used cruise missile against Ukrainian infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and probably it's not the case, but I feel this as you want to do a ceasefire of 30 days on an infrastructure. Good, we will help you. Because I don't think this is a stock that would last more than that, probably. So I think for this reason, I see this also in that way. It's possible that they just had a good pack of information, as Erlend has said, and they say, okay, let's go do it, and then some luck help sometime. But
yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm still thinking that this was also political.
Yeah, I just did want to say real quick, because you bring up a good point, which is was a lot of talk in the media kind of about like there was a ceasefire and it was broken. That's never was clear to me based on the way the officials were talking about it. It seems to me pretty clear that on the 24th, there are going to be Ukrainian officials and Russian officials. It's not clear that they will even be in the same room, but they will have mediated discussions by the Saudis and I assume other parties, and they're going to work out technical specifics for an actual ceasefire. So that's like my general understanding of like the ceasefire situation. And I think the media kind of glossed over a lot of details about that, and they were kind of implying ceasefires were made already and broken already. And I mean, maybe that's a possible interpretation of what happened. I'm not saying it's not, but my vibes based on what no US officials or Ukrainian officials were saying like there was a I shouldn't say Ukrainian officials, but no US officials were saying there was a ceasefire
in place and it was broken. They were saying we're looking forward to working out the specifics of the ceasefire, right? So that's the language that was being used. But anyway, did anyone else want to clarify or make any final comments on the airbase strike before we go to Q&A?
Nope.
Cool. So yeah, I guess we'll wait till the 24th and see if the ceasefire is in place. But it's a good point, Daniela, that there's a lot of signaling going on, I think, by both the Russians and the Ukrainians with various strikes right now about what can be hit and what should be in the ceasefire and things like that. So it's a really good point you bring up about the political dimensions of this. Mr. Guest, did you want to chime in on anything? Go ahead.
Me? No, I just
Okay.
one question. If you don't mind, can I answer my questions first? Because just got a message that I should leave soon. If you don't mind.
Absolutely. So if we
Okay,
can just get
perfect.
all Gesh's questions out of the way, Mr.
It's
Erlend.
not much. I quickly have it done. So there's two questions as far as I can see. One from Nina Konikova. What's happening in Bilorivka? Yeah, nothing good. I think at the beginning of at the end of January, Ukraine lost a very, very important position there, which has led to heavy losses on the Ukrainian side, and especially February. The 81st Airmobile Brigade has suffered immense, sadly, it has suffered a lot of losses in February, and it's basically, I think by now, Bilohorivka is kind of gone, isn't it? I mean, I haven't checked the maps in the recent days, but yep. Let's say it like that. That developed very badly around end of January, and they have lost a lot of Bilohorivka now, and the Ukrainian positions aren't really as good as they were before, sadly. So that's the current situation in Bilohorivka. And the second question was about the crossings in the Skill. I have a funny anecdote for that. There are two Russian units who are arguing who is doing this crossing. It's first of all, it's the 69th Motor Rifle Division. They're saying that their units are doing the crossing, and then there's the 25th Motor Rifle Brigade who is saying no, only we are doing the crossing. In reality, both are doing them, and the Ukrainians have now transferred the 17th National Guard Brigade there. They have retaken positions in Fikolivka, and yeah, I mean, it's quite important that they eventually throw them back over the Oskil. The Russians haven't really been able to develop the bridgeheads that they achieved that much, but it's still very crucial that they are fully thrown back over the river again. That's my assessment of the situation there.
Okay, Mr. Gesh, we'll let you get out of here if you got to get going. So thanks again for your presentation. I think it was really good. And
thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good night. See you.
Bye.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the chat?
Yep. So Marino asks, this is a very general question, but I think we have two people that at least can answer it. From Marino, I have a question about F-35. How important are they for Europe's defense, or are they replaceable, and not that important? And I would say that's a variable, because there are countries that have F-35, there are countries that are not, that don't have them, and they of course have integrated their planes that they have with their defense. But maybe Daniela and Colby can answer that question more in detail.
Yeah, I would say that obviously it is variable to your point. Some countries operate F-35 and F-35 alone. They've divested other aircraft. Some countries have a mixed fleet. Some countries don't operate F-35 at all. But I would say collectively, if no country in Europe had F-35, if they, every country decided we're just going to get rid of them tomorrow, that would be pretty catastrophic, and Europe would not really have any sort of credible air power, really, with as it pertains to deterring Russia. What they would be left with would not be a match for the combined strength of the Russian Air Force, and more importantly, Russia's ground-based air defenses, which, despite all the memes that people like to share about what Russian air defense doing, if Russian air defense wasn't effective at all, this war would already be over. But because it is actually a potent threat, the war continues, because if it wasn't, Ukraine would have a lot more freedom of action against the Russians. But these are in fact capable systems. S-300, S-400. They can perform what they are intended to do, and European air forces largely just don't have the means to deal with those. They just don't have the anti-radiation missiles. And if there were no F-35s, then Europe wouldn't have any anti-radiation missiles, really, or very few at least. Very few platforms that would be able to employ them. So I would say it'd be very highly problematic for them to not have F-35. The Russians would definitely have a quantitative advantage. You can argue about what the qualitative difference would be, but I would say it'd be at least parity with the Russians if Europe was not operating any 5th gen platforms. So.
Yeah, I think for the Soviet legacy systems, a lot of it comes down to you really need an experienced crew who understands the mechanics of the system to a degree that maybe in some Western systems you don't, right? Because I mean, Ukraine used a lot of those systems, and there's a lot of other post-Soviet states that use them pretty effectively. So I think with a lot of the like Russian blooper air defense reels we see is probably like down to they're using really inexperienced crews. Yeah.
I mean, yes, possibly. But again, I mean, people have to remember that there's massive selection bias here. There's massive confirmation bias. I mean, to say that Russian air defense systems are just not effective or they're not good would be very inaccurate. And a lot of the problems that existed earlier on in the war just don't really exist anymore, because Russians are capable of learning. Interception rates escalated quite substantially over time as the Russians became more capable. So whereas initially they weren't having a whole lot of success intercepting Storm Shadow or Scalp EG, that their interception rates rose quite a bit. Ditto ATACMS. So it would be a mistake to say that these systems are not a threat and that the Russians just in general don't know how to use them. It would be a big problem for European air forces to deal with in the absence of a 5th generation stealth platform with integrated anti-radiation missiles. Without that capability, it'd be very hard for them to defeat those ground-based air defenses.
Daniela, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I share most of the point with Colby, and what I want to add is the fact that I think in general, if F-35 gives something to Europe, is the overmatch. So the fact that we have a very potent power and agile platform, which the Russians do not have at the same quantity and the same quality. And the air defense will be always an issue, but if something starts, Europe advantage is in air power. So without F-35, we would have less, maybe more, but less efficient and powerful platform, and then these overmatch may be not exactly as big as we have now. So it would increase the cost in the end for us to fight. So I think at the moment, F-35 is a very nice platform, despite anyone want to critique it, has been, of course, a very difficult project, but it's a very good platform. There is no doubt about that. And at the moment, we don't have anything to replace. I mean, we could go on the Rafale, but you know, Erlend, that I'm very livid with the French because they are not producing much, and I think Gao also knows this. I mean, they want to produce more Rafale, but how many? In which lag time? 15 years? The war could start in 2. We need those planes now. So I don't think we have any alternative for these. For the anti-radiation missile, that's a point. Also because even if we can trust the Americans, the problem is that we are approaching 2027 and we cannot rely completely on the Americans because they may have other issues in the Pacific eventually. So we need to find an alternative for that.
And just from my side, I don't know if Kobe covered it or not. Sorry if yes. Straight to the point, the F-35 are for Germany completely irreplaceable when it comes to nuclear deterrence. So yeah, there's no other option.
Yeah, I didn't mention Germany specifically, but obviously we've seen a lot of European F-35 operators come out and explicitly say that they remain committed to the program. And I think something else that's very important to note, and I'll probably be writing something about this at some point in time, either for Insider or SIPA, is that people need to dispense with this idea of the F-35 just being an American platform, because it isn't. It is a joint program between a lot of different countries. And the F-35 supply chain spans Europe and other suppliers around the world. And so this idea that somehow the United States could just cut people out of the F-35 program, well, that would be dismantling the program entirely, because the United States is also reliant on all of these partner countries to provide all of the parts to produce the aircraft and parts to sustain the aircraft fleet. So the street goes both ways. So this is just not something that's ever going to happen, because it would just basically be an end of the aircraft. And the United States is also, extremely reliant on the F-35. It's going to make up a huge portion of the United States military's fleet across the board, Air Force, Navy, although the Navy really isn't buying as many as they should, but Navy, Marine Corps, without F-35, the United States would be relying on, a very small number of F-22s and then a bunch more of, legacy aircraft that are very rapidly aging, already aged out, really. I mean, the U.S. fighter force overall is in severe need of recapitalization still. And that's only being addressed right now by F-35 and a very small number right now. New production Eagle-2s. Obviously, the F-47 announcement was just made, but that's still years away from low-rate initial production. So F-35 is not going anywhere, and there's really no actual risk here. It's just these concerns are not grounded in any sort of reality. They're based on a total lack of understanding of how the program actually works.
It's called a Joint Strike Fighter, right? So
yes, Joint Strike Fighter. So the joint is, I guess it has sort of two connotations in that, again, it's a joint program between all of the the service arms in the United States that operate aircraft. But you can consider it joint in the sense of, it's a partnership between the United States and a lot of other partners are members of the F-35 program and have contributed money to the development of it, and are involved in producing a lot of different components for the aircraft. So, if any country were to decide that they want to stop participating in the program, that would be highly problematic. And we can see what happened when the United States decided to remove Turkey from the program because they bought S-400, and that caused a lot of problems for the F-35 supply chain and delayed production of aircraft, and it added some not insignificant costs to the production of those future airframes, because they had to qualify new suppliers for about 1,000 parts in total, and that was just one member. So if you had multiple members, getting into a spat here in the United States saying, "Oh, we're not going to provide support for other operators," well, all those other operators can turn around and do the same thing, and now the whole aircraft just doesn't work anymore, because nobody's providing support, and no new aircraft can get built because those parts are being withheld. So there's no actual risk of this happening. If that happens, the United States and everybody else are just finished completely. So I don't see any realistic scenario in which that would happen, because it would just be a total dismantling of the United States' own air power.
I think I speak for all dumb people when I say I didn't know nothing about none of that, Colby. Thanks.
Let's go to the next question. So Marino had another question. I think it's for Daniele, but I'm not sure exactly what it's about. How many of those missile testing facilities do they roughly have in Russia? Did you mention anything about testing facilities?
No, but my best guess is referring to the assembly line that has been destroyed. Maybe that.
Okay. Okay, so if it was the loading facility, then basically every airbase that operates the strategic bomber has one.
Yeah, at least 6, closer to coming close. Closer to Europe. Then you have those deep in Siberia, but the state on how they are, we really don't know.
Okay, and then Snore, or SN0R. What is your overall assessment of Ukraine's long-range capabilities? Will we be seeing more of this kind of attack? And then that's a twofold question, because at one point, Ukraine has been, I would say they've been enhancing their own drone program and also missile production program, although very slowly. At the same time, they're receiving less long-range strike capability missiles from Europe, because the US are probably not going to provide any more ATACMS as far as we know, and the production of Scalp EG and Storm Shadow isn't very fast, and doesn't seem like we're ready to give up large stockpiles. But maybe Germany to Ukraine has something to say about that soon.
Sorry, can you repeat?
I'm just saying that you might have something to say about that soon, but not yet.
About what?
About
Sorry,
Taurus. He's at making a comment about the possibility that Germany might finally supply Taurus to Ukraine.
Guys, I already told you we delivered 5,000 missiles last week. They struck the facility with 500 Taurus. I already told you.
Stop tweeting them.
But I like, from what I've observed over the last year, Ukraine has at least enhanced its drone program to not have so many low-cost drones that are not very effective, to having more effective drones. I'm not sure if that's going to accelerate. Hopefully it will. At the same time, if that Long Neptune program ever gets to the level of mass production, that certainly will strengthen the Ukrainian long strike capabilities. But I wouldn't say that they are very good still. The Ukraine really needs a lot more. Daniela has a lot more info about this, because you know about all the targets.
Yeah, honestly, when you plot all the potential target on the map, I mean, the only alternative is a nuclear bomb, but alternatively, we really need the Tomahawks, but we don't have them. Europe decided to don't produce a long-range missile, which are 1,000-kilometer missile. They are not even ballistic missile, long-range ballistic missile. But yes, such a capability would be important because if they can strike, they can start to strike deep into Russia. They can start to arrive to Perm, which is yeah. I suggest you to disable some. But yeah, you can see, guys. I mean, the number of target that you can see there is only what we manage to geolocate and keep information about. Some have been already destroyed, some have been damaged, but still most intact. And also, if Erlend can disable everything apart the air defense, these are the major sites. There are probably more, in particular with short range or medium range air defense, and you can see that there are areas which are much better protected, and Moscow is one of these. Crimea used to be one of these, but Moscow is simply impossible, I think, to unless you have the F-35 capabilities and stuff like that. But many other sites like Perm, Volgograd, all these major industrial heart are not as protected, not because the Russians are full, but because there is an attrition on the front line where these systems have been damaged, radar have been destroyed, but also the extent, the amount of front line and airspace that you have to protect. Now, when you attack with a missile, for some reason, if the missile is not designed as Storm Shadow or as JSON to be not stealth, but very hard to be identified, also for the flight path that it takes, it's much easier to detect and in case to intercept. Low altitude, slow moving drone, of course, for this type of defense system can be very challenging, especially if they are arriving from different directions. They are trying to do elusive maneuver. So it's I think in general, the increase in capability of striking deep, even at 1,500, I remember 1,500 kilometers deep in Russia, is very important. Now, the issue is that when you do this with drones, you don't have a massive warhead. There is no way to go that far with the current technology that they are using. So if to know to do enough damage, you need to be very precise and also attack. For example, when I don't know, they are emptying a train full of very highly explosive devices. So in that way, you start something that then can produce a complete destruction of the site. In a more Western way, you would use a long-range missile like Tomahawk, in this case, Long Neptune, which have the capability of being precise, being quick, and deliver a substantial warhead that can destroy even a bunker. So I think this type of advancement are also a way to acquire more leverage against Russia, because now Russia starts to feel that it is not invincible, can be violated, it can be attacked on its own soil, also at very high cost, because Toropets and all the other ammo depot have been a very big humiliation for Russia.
Did you want to add something, Colby?
Yeah, so on quote unquote Long Neptune, and just for the audience's information, this is sort of an informal name within Ukrainian military that's kind of come out to the media. So that's what people are calling it, but that's not actually what the missile is actually designated as. It doesn't have a real proper name, just sort of an internal project designation. So Long Neptune is just kind of what it's being known as. But I guess I'll say that it's not actually really a Neptune derivative, so it's kind of a misnomer. You've heard certainly myself, probably also have heard this from John or seen John write this, that Neptune is really not a very good missile at all. Quite bad, actually. And so this missile, it's not, an improvement of Neptune, because the Neptune design is not really improvable to this degree. So really, we're talking about a new missile altogether, and that's why they've been able to increase the range so substantially, because it's not actually an evolution of the Neptune design, which is just not good. Neptune lost out to Harpoon and I think some other systems as well in the Ukrainian Army's own trials, but the government wanted a domestic system, so that's what they got. So I mean, the fact that they have this missile now with at least an initial operational capability is good. Holding additional targets at risk, putting greater warhead mass on target, as Danielle said, very important. There's only so much you can do with drones, and so they're generally speaking not very good for trying to hit these strategic level targets, which even with more sophisticated cruise or ballistic missiles, it's hard to do serious damage to an industrial target, for example. You need to put a lot of ordnance on target to really do meaningful damage and take things out of operation for a while. So there's definitely a school of thought within Ukrainian military that they would be better served by going after, you might say, more symbolic targets, like in Moscow, for example, rather than trying to destroy infrastructure, which can be hard, but sending more of a political message to the Russian establishment by targeting Moscow, which obviously the Russians are routinely hitting Kyiv. So there's a line of thinking that there needs to be more what's known as counter value attacks against Russia to try and sort of give the Russian people an appreciation for what they're what's happening in Ukraine, and just send that message to Putin. So I mean, if they can scale up production and continue to make refinements to this missile, that'd be very good. It would be very helpful if European countries were willing to lend some technical assistance to the Ukrainians, because that's not something that has really happened so far. The Ukrainians are basically doing this on their own, although they are sourcing materials probably from outside the country. They're not getting a lot of direct technical assistance in developing these capabilities. And Europe, although their own capabilities are not super mature in this field, they definitely do have capacity that can be lended to Ukraine to help them, and that's something that would be very, very fruitful. So if Europe's still not willing to invest in their own longer range strike capabilities, at least they can lend some technical assistance to Ukrainians to allow them to develop those capabilities on their own. Because obviously this remains an essential capability, that the war is, Ukrainians are not going to fare well if they can't try and get some level of balance or parity in this domain, because there remains obviously just a huge asymmetry, and Russians have a large arsenal of different missiles they can hit anywhere in Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't have anything close to that. So trying to even the scales there remains very important.
Yeah, I think we covered most of the questions, and also the stream has gone on for quite a while.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. It's been, a very informative stream. A lot happened this week. I think a lot will be happening in the following week, like this upcoming week. Again, there's going to be talks in Saudi Arabia and things like that. So, everyone should probably stay tuned. We'll also be trying to get out, as Erlend said, a talk pretty soon. So I think the best way you can probably keep up with all that stuff is probably to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and maybe check us out on Twitter or Blue Sky, and get any updates there. You can also go to the website, Tochnyi.info, on your screen, and that'll also be a good place to
see some updates. So I want to thank our panel for giving us a lot of really important information today. I learned a lot personally. I hope everyone in our audience did. Thanks to our audience, our live chat, for, of course, hanging around with us and also for asking all those great questions. We love your feedback. We like to learn what the public wants to know about what's going on with the Russian invasion. So thanks again for that. And of course, if you can't make it for the live stream at 2100 Kyiv time, you're always welcome to watch the video on demand or some of the produced segments from the live stream later on. So thanks to everyone who watches after the fact. You're welcome to just say anything you like in the comments. We'll do our best to take your feedback on board. So thanks again for all that everyone does around here. And we'll see you next week at 2100 Kyiv time Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Slava.
On behalf of the brave.